everybody, and welcome to the Think Like a Thought Leader show, where Black entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers like you come to learn how to use their impact and influence to build wealth. Now, Father's Day is on Sunday. Didn't it just creep up on us? And even though Father's Day does not get the love that Mother's Day always gets, I wanted to do a special edition of the show where I'm chatting it up with Darrin Collins about his latest children's book, No No Mountain High Enough, Zola's daddy-daughter dates. We're also discussing the ways dads build unbreakable bonds with their children. Darrin is an author, he's a scholar, and an international martial arts competitor. He was born and raised in Chicago, and he's a global traveler that pulls inspiration for his characters from his many international international adventures. And as a Chicago high school teacher, he's committed to integrating themes of identity, social justice, and judicial policy into his writing that directly relate to and inspire the youth in which he works. Welcome to the show, Darrin. It's great to have you.
I appreciate it. How you all doing out there?
So for those of you watching right now, or those of you who will watch after this goes live, Darrin and I go back like 4 flats on the Cadillac. Okay, we went to the same college, we graduated the same class, and it's just so awesome to be able to have this conversation with a fellow Denison alum. So if you're tuning in and you're a Denison alum, go ahead and drop in the comment what year you graduated, and with the hashtag DU everywhere. I'd love to see who you are. And we have a lot to discuss today. So before we get into it, I encourage those of you who are watching right now to share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is a father who is like, you know what? Father's Day doesn't get all the hype and the celebration that Mother's Day does. Well, on today's show, we are bigging up the Black fathers. So go ahead and share this with someone you know that needs to hear it. And as always, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. So, Darrin, can you talk about...
We also need to know fathers are not competing with mothers. We don't need to go as big of a day. All right.
So, Darrin, can you talk about the mission behind your work and the books that you write?
Yeah, so my author name is Darrin 1831 Collins, and a lot of people often ask me what's the 1831 stand for, and that simultaneously being the year that Denison was founded, right? But it's also the year that Nat Turner revolted in Virginia. And for me, that stands as a very pivotal point in time. But as somebody who has adopted that year and that name and that title, my goal as an author is to just support and promote a healthy Black esteem for foundational Black Americans. And that's really taking in that understanding of our own identity and who we are in this country and what we want our outward identity to be and how people will respond to us, right?
Right. Absolutely. So that's super deep. So how did all of that inform your decision to write a children's book?
So I recently had a daughter. So my children's book...
Congratulations.
Appreciate it. No Mountain High Enough. So my daughter's name is Zola, and her mother and I had some issues during the pregnancy and post-pregnancy. Not to go too far, but there were some mental health issues on the mother's side, and there was some postpartum depression that set in, and our relationship didn't last, right? And I think for me, there's a lot of representations of the very traditional family, mother and father, even for Black authors, there's a very traditional representation. And I think that a lot of us grew up, myself included, a lot of us grew up in very non-traditional households. And that can make people like myself and my daughter who will grow up in a blended family uncomfortable to talk about the way that we grew up and some of the differences between ourselves and people with traditional families, even though we have no insight into their family or their household. We just assume that if you have a mother and a father that it's a healthy household, right? So I wanted to form a healthy representation of a non-traditional household as well, and a relationship between a father and a daughter.
I love that. I love that. So, your book is called No Mountain High Enough, Zola's Daddy-Daughter Dates. So, can you talk a little bit about what's inside the book without giving it away? Because, guys, I think this would make a really great Father's Day gift. But what's the book about?
So, like I said, so my daughter is my muse for everything that I do now, and it's a really fun experience that everybody beforehand told me was going to be really difficult. But I mean, there are challenges, right, with anything in life that you want to do and that you want to pursue. But my daughter has been really foundational in my ideas for the future and in my creative process. And so all of the experiences that we have and all of the dates that we have gone on, I've tried to encapsulate and put in the book. And I have a couple more books that have already been created that I'm going to get out very soon. Just detailing, so she's 1 year old now, but detailing the first year of her life and those experiences that we've had together.
That's incredible. And I think that it's also something that can be so unique to her to know that her father wrote a series of books about her. So that, when she grows up and starts to sort of want to recall those earlier years, it's kind of chronicled, in a way that is positive. So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And the goal as of now is to plan through, like, Zola goes to college, right? Zola goes on her first.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's the plan as of now. So.
That's dope. So the late great Kobe Bryant proudly talked about being a girl dad. And after he passed away, there was sort of this influx of messaging and a lot of posting on social media using the hashtag girl dad, where a lot of fathers were talking about the unique connection and the unique bond that they have with their daughters. What does being a girl dad mean to you?
Yeah, so before I jump into that, I actually have a very particular affinity to Kobe Bryant. And I'll tell a little anecdote before jumping in. Growing up, I had a favorite cousin. His name is Ashton, and he was a year older than me. And so Ashton's birthday is March 6th, which happens to be Shaq's birthday. And my birthday is August 23rd, which happens to be Kobe's birthday. So growing up, we always thought we were like the dynamic duo, even playing basketball or wrestling or whatever. We were like that dynamic duo, but I was always Kobe in the relationship, right? So I've always had a particular affinity. And, even like down to personality, some ways I feel like I'm very much like Kobe. You know me. I'm particularly competitive. I'm very like headstrong. I think my voice kind of sounds like Kobe. Like I'll hear Kobe documentaries, like, damn, he sound like me, right? Like,
Yeah.
Kobe was low key a ladies' man. He took Brandy on prom, like so.
That he did. We remember.
So I feel like there's definitely some commonalities between me and the late brother Kobe. And in terms of like being a girl dad, right? I could imagine, the curse of a player, right? Having 7, 8 daughters, right? Just like, you know what I mean? Back to back to back. And I think for me being a girl dad, it's, and we've talked, we're kind of like alluding to the world that we're living in right now. And it's a very vulnerable place for a lot of people. And I think that being a girl dad, being the dad of a Black woman, I take that with a lot of pride. I'm very, I have a lot of gratitude to God for my daughter, and the fact that she's healthy, the fact that she's smart. You know what I mean? She's one, but we play games. She knows where her eyes are. She knows where her nose is. You know what I mean? So I think, watching a Black woman grow up and being a part of that investment is a wonderful thing. But preparing anybody for the world that we are seeing and the realities of an assault on who we are as Black people. not just our bodies, right? Like, there's an assault on who we are and an assault on our identities. Everybody's going to die. They can kill as many as they want, not going that far, but like they can kill as many as they want, but like the real assault is on the people who survive. And
the trauma. The trauma,
but also the fear, right? The fear that this could be you. And I think preparing a Black woman for that world where a 6'5" police officer might put his hands on you, and very likely will in certain situations, I think is very, it can appear to be a daunting task, but I actually, I'm a international martial artist, right? That's with pride. And I think that, creating somebody who has that durability is a challenge. You want to coddle and you want to, be very nurturing, but also at some point you will have to release this person into the world. And that's scary, right? So
yeah, especially now when it feels like Black women are an afterthought in a lot of the broader discussions that we're having. We talk about police brutality. Oftentimes that is synonymous in a lot of people's minds with Black men. And oftentimes people rarely say our names. They rarely march exclusively for us, right? Exclusively for us. And so how are you cognizant of and intentional about preparing your daughter for a world that may not always appreciate who she is, not just because she's Black, but also because of other intersectional identities that she might have, one of them being identifying as a woman?
Yeah, I think so. The challenge of preparing a woman for the world, like I said, is a beautiful challenge, and I think that in particular, Black women have always been an afterthought. I think in particular, we can go back, to the lynchings. We can go back to, that particular period of time, even though we're still in that period of time, right? You can consider what happened to George Floyd, a public lynching, right? So I think that Black women are often considered afterthoughts. And I often think of imagery. I want to say it was in Minnesota. There was a Black woman who was lynched, and she was pregnant, and her fetus was still kicking as she was lynched. And I think there's a number of things to discuss and to think about there. You think about, one, this was Minnesota, right? This was not this was not a slave owning state at the time, particularly. And I think too, this was a pregnant woman, so 2 murders happened in that one, right? But also the afterthought of Black women. You rarely see Black women in the lynching photos. You rarely see or hear Black women in the slave, revolutions, the struggles. Who do we think we're getting all of those secrets? Right? Like Civil War. And this is, I'm speaking of this beforehand, but my next book is going to be about that particular time period. But there was a lot of espionage. A lot of Black women were cooks and were cleaning in the house. And, the Confederate leaders, Jefferson Davis, all of them had these Black women like catering to them and seeing maps, and some of these women had like photographic memories and would come back, because they couldn't read, right? Like some of them, like photographic memories because they couldn't read, and would come back and tell Union soldiers and Union generals all of this information that brought down the Confederacy. And this history is often lost because, well, one, who tells the history, but two, nobody cares about women, right? And in this history, and I don't mean like nobody, but like, I think for me as a father, wrapping it back, my goal, one of the very first books that I read to my daughter was a book about Cherokee history and the role of women in Cherokee history. And you'll see a lot of indigenous histories have a dualism in their gods, where there's a masculine and a feminine version of the gods, and feminine version holds just as much weight as the masculine, and that you often see that in the household as well. And my goal in reading these identities, these strong female identities, is that my daughter will have a voice. Like I said, right, like you prepare something for what you want it to be. I don't want my daughter to be a baby her whole life, right? I want her to be a powerful woman. And my goal there is to invest in a way that she understands who she is, because I'm going to release her to the world at one point, and I'm not a woman. So she's going to be in predicaments and situations that I've never been in. And she will need to know how to carry herself accordingly. And part of carrying yourself accordingly is having a very strong conscience and having that inner voice that says, no, this isn't for me. Right?
Yeah. So. That's awesome that you have such a nuanced understanding of, I think, the experience, the Black womanhood experience, and also understanding sort of the limitations that you have with fully understanding it simply because you don't identify as a woman, but making sure that your daughter is fully equipped. So Greg Kendrick is watching, and he says, thank you.
What up, Greg?
Thank you for a book that focuses on non-traditional families. And so, given everything that's happening right now, you mentioned the fact that you are preparing your daughter to be a powerful woman. What is your other greatest hope? What are some of your other greatest hopes for your daughter? For your children?
I think for my children, I think one thing that is dope about being a parent is that when children are born, they're not a blank slate, right? They have temperament, they have personality, they have people they don't like already, which is very crazy to see a baby like, I don't really like her. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they do it, and especially once they start walking, oh my God. Like the ability to not go towards somebody is amazing.
They be knowing.
I don't know if you've seen that meme of the it's a little baby, it has to be a white baby that runs into the room, stops, and then turns and runs away. You're like, nah, this ain't for me. And so I think that my goal is that she follow her divine purpose, and that whatever was asked of her from God, that she, fulfill that. You can't really secure that, right? We all fall short, but I think that my goal for Zola and any of my other kids is that they know God, and that God will lead them way better than I can, right? So,
wow, that's powerful, because I think so often children, and it doesn't matter how they identify, what ethnicity they are. Often we, parents kind of mold children into what they want them to be, and sort of squelch out the curiosity inside them and their own inner voice. So, in what ways have you seen? I know Zola's only a year old, but in what ways have you seen her develop and trust herself? And how have you nurtured that, even in these early years?
You say develop and trust herself. I think even watching her learn how to walk and balance her head, trusting herself not to fall, that entire process, I think for me, has really grown, right? You see her from crawling, she would scoot initially because she wouldn't crawl forward, and then she started, eventually started crawling, eventually started climbing up on things, then trusting herself to move away from them, and she took it at her own pace, which I found very dope, right? If we were asking her to walk and she didn't want to, she'd hurry up and find something to hold on to. But I think that's another thing, right? children have their own temperament, or babies have their own temperament, and they move at their own pace in many ways. And I would even say, like, potty training now, right, is she does it when she wants to, right? Sometimes that poop or that pee will happen in the bathtub. Sometimes it'll happen before the bathtub, right? So, now we gotta run a new bath. But I think those situations, but also her ability to trust me and others too. I think that's also foundational in her ability to trust herself. And I see it growing as she becomes more communicative, and as there was a point in having a child. I didn't know there was a point where babies didn't smile on their own. I thought babies just always smiled on their own. But there's a point for the first 4 months where the baby is mocking you and it's smiling. So it's mimicking your facial expressions. And man, things you learn as a parent, right? And things you learn about yourself. But absolutely, seeing her just grow in trusting others and herself has been pretty dope.
So Anna's watching and she says, facts. Their discernment is on 1,000%. Their assignment is ingrained. It is our responsibility to help guide them towards their assignment. And that's coming from a mother of 3.
What you say her name was?
Anna.
You're a Delisa.
You're a Delisa. It's another one of our Denison alums tuning in. Thank you, Anna, for tuning in. So what's the most rewarding thing about being a father, and what can you tell others who look at you and say, wow, you're a dad now, Darrin? It's really interesting seeing you as a dad now, I have to say that. You're a dad now, Darrin. I'm looking to be a father. What can you tell me?
Yeah, leading up to this, I had a conversation with another one of our friends, Everett. And Everett, we were having this conversation about getting married. And Everett told me, he was like, yeah, I couldn't even imagine you getting married, bro. I got a small, young, unconventional family. And such is life. And I think for me, the most rewarding part of this whole experience, one has been learning about myself, but also having more purpose, right? Like I said, my daughter is my muse. You know me, and a lot of other people, Anna, Greg, you guys know me as well. I'm a loose cannon, and I tend to be reckless. And I had to differentiate recently between reckless and ruthless. I care about people, right? I care about people. I care about their feelings. And people can't say that, but I'm not bashful about the way that I do things. And also, if I want to do something, whether legal, illegal, whether I'm going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's who I've always been, right? Whether it's, president of Denison University, shout out DLT, or random person at the gas station, right? I will voice my opinion. I think that for me, the most foundational piece, or the most beneficial piece of being a parent, is having a purpose consistently and having a reason. Having a reason to hone my talents, having a reason to get better every day. I've always, you know me. I feel like I've always been a very talented person, and I've kind of rode that wave. I'm hardworking, but once focus was combined with that talent, I think it's just taken off for me, and opportunities have taken off. I recently finished my coursework for my PhD.
Congratulations!
Appreciate it. So, life is different right now for me, and it's different than I anticipated. Not necessarily even, this isn't the life that I wanted, but just different than the life that I anticipated several years ago and who I am now. Like you said, I'm a father, but I'm also many other things, right? Like I'm a mentor, I'm an educator, and I've worked with young people for quite a long time. I worked with young people for over a decade now as a teacher, right? And it's that also will change you. And give you more compassion, one, but also be able to identify like structural issues as well with the system that we're facing too, right? So I think, yeah.
So your book, No Mountain High Enough, Zola's Daddy-Daughter Dates, talks about there it is. It talks about in it has this theme of the non-traditional family and the focus on the non-traditional family. What do you hope to add to the conversation within the children's book industry, and also as an educator and as a scholar, about how families can operate and how parents can build unbreakable bonds with their children, even if the bond breaks between themselves and their partners?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm hoping to add just to the children's book genre. For one, is the blackface. Right, just the very traditional blackface in positive representation. As I said, my goal consistently is just to have a very positive identity for the Black esteem, so that we know who we are and we're able to speak from that place and not have this kind of. So the traditional identity of the Black father would be absent in America, right? That's what that's what we understand. And I think for a long time, the traditional response of Black America was like, no, we're here. Let's have James in Florida. Let's have, like the Cosbys, right? Let's have all of these representations of these families, like they're pushing through, particularly with the, James in Florida piece, right? And even the actor couldn't act like, I'm taking all of these bad days. You know what I mean? Even the actor was like, nah, this ain't good.
Yeah. John Amos was like, I'm out.
Right? Like, there's no good
kill me off.
So, he was an actor, right? He was getting paid to be this father. And he was like, I can't be this father. And there are real circumstances, right? As I discussed, I didn't jump off into it, but my partner was diagnosed as bipolar in 2016, right? We tried to work through all of that, and hormone shift during pregnancy, things that we can't identify, right? And there were some definite mental health issues, and that's not a healthy place for anybody to be, a child, boyfriend, partner, whatever, right? But we have a child, and that bond, you know what I'm saying? We're connected now, and we both have a responsibility to take care of this child and to make sure that our child is healthy, growing, mentally healthy, spiritually healthy. And I think that the representation no longer has to be, we're sticking together for the child, and then, when the child turns 18, 19, we break up, or the child finds out that dad's been cheating this whole time, mom's been cheating this whole time, as opposed to, man, right? The parents had an amicable, split.
Yeah.
Let's continue to have a relationship for our child, but, we don't have to be best friends. Right?
Yeah.
We often how these relationships end. Sometimes they end, with disputes, but often they end. We have a child. We need to talk to each other about this child.
Right.
That representation needs to be upheld as well.
I agree, because it's a reality for so many people. And like you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, just that absence of that representation also says a lot to kids. It probably creates shame and maybe some sense of guilt that they may not have the quote unquote traditional family structure, which could make them feel inadequate. So I'm really glad that you decided to write this book. Like I said, guys, I think this would be an amazing Father's Day gift to pick up. You can get it at collinscubicle.com. That's No Mountain High Enough, Zola's daddy-daughter dates.
Before we go, so I happen to know you very well, and I also happen to know that you are a daddy's girl, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
I think some of these questions, not to flip the interview on you, right? But I think some of these questions you can answer as well. But so knowing you and knowing that you're a daddy's girl, right? What is that impact that your father's relationship, and I know you had tons of daddy-daughter dates as well, right? So what's the impact those daddy-daughter dates have on you, your relationship with your husband, your selection of your husband, any of that?
Wow. Okay, so these are all great questions, and I have been really thinking about this as I've been thinking about my own relationship with my father, who is no longer with us. He passed away in 2009, as you remember, Darrin. Thank you so much. And so having that bond with my own father for 21 years was amazing, and I think that unfortunately, even though he's not here, I can recall fondly the memories that we shared, and those are forever with me. And just even the way that he affirmed my identity as a young Black woman, the way that he nurtured me and took just as much responsibility for me and my brother as my mother did. I saw that, like you were mentioning earlier, how in the household there was this almost even share of duties of parenthood. It wasn't like, because I hate when people say, or when they say that dads babysit their children. I'm like, you can't babysit your own children. That's crazy. So that really stayed with me. And as I was becoming serious about getting married and partnering up for life and all of that good stuff, I knew that I wanted a lot of the characteristics that my father had in my own husband, especially as I'm thinking about bringing my own children into the world. And so that really informs my choices, not just romantically, but in all friendships, all relationships. Because I think that dads have this really great ability to, again, affirm their children and to provide a lot of that grounding. And so it's because of him that I even move like this. It's because of him that I'm free to be exactly who I am and, not have to worry about trying to seek for approval. So yeah, those are the impacts of, I'm literally the embodiment of the daddy-daughter date, and how that can turn out for a child. And so that's really why, too, I wanted to have you on the show, because I think that Zola is really lucky to have a dad like you who just is thinking about her development in such a powerful and intentional way. So thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing this time with us. So you mentioned before we got on live that you actually have a Father's Day trivia game going on. So can you talk to us about it?
I do have a Father's Day trivia game going on. Currently, if you want to participate, it is related to my debut novel, Native Invisibility, which is very pertinent to current situations and current issues right now involving police brutality. As you can see by the cover, it's a very interesting journey that the main character, Jamal, takes. So the trivia questions are related to Native Invisibility. The winners of those trivia questions, you will need to tune in to my Facebook Live today at 6 p.m. And tomorrow at 6 p.m. to get those trivia questions. And again, the winner will get a copy of Native Invisibility. You also get a copy of Zola Daddy-Daughter Dates. And also my unreleased version of Dr. Zola and Daddy Explore Ear Infections. All right.
Oh!
So you can see my unreleased book. which comes out in late August, early September.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. So that's incredible. So make sure you tune in to Darrin's Facebook Live today and tomorrow at 6 p.m. Now, is that 6 p.m. Eastern or Central? Okay, Central. Let me put that on there. For a chance to win not just a copy of Zola's Daddy Daughter or Go Out and High of Zola's Daddy Daughter Dates, but Native Invisibility, which if you think Parable of the Sower is something, and also Darrin's unreleased children's book. What's the title of it again?
Daddy Explore Ear Infection.
Awesome. Okay, so make sure you guys tune in. The information is in the lower thirds below. Darrin, what's next for you as an author?
Man, so I think I'm definitely continuing the route, as I said, of the children's book and putting the black faces where they need to be, in my opinion. So I started a garden recently. I actually have some cabbage that I'm growing right here that I'm going to transplant.
Look at you.
So I'm going to detail how composting occurs in my next book, kind of taking a magic school bus type route in the black children's books. The unreleased Dr. Zola and Daddy Explore Ear Infections also takes a really scientific route. So giving black faces to scientists as well. As you see, Dr. Zola and Daddy have on lab coats. So just giving those positive black identities. In terms of my adult books and my novels, so for Native Invisibility, I actually just created a curriculum, so to get them into schools, and it's a 10-day curriculum for the standard English teacher. If anybody is a teacher out there, please hit me up, and we can work on getting copies of the book to your school, and that would be lovely, especially since it's very pertinent in terms of dealing directly with the idea of police violence and the concept of a melanoid identity, speaking to people with melanin and that Black Lives Matter movement, which is essentially a melanoid movement, right? And what else is for me? So I'm also writing another book, as I said, pertaining to antebellum slavery and many of what I would identify the falsehoods that we're told about antebellum slavery, including that when Europeans arrived, there were no black people here. If we see the monuments in South America, those were black faces. And they were black faces for a reason. They also resemble a lot of the pyramids that were in Egypt for some reason, right? And that's because black people are already here, and our identities and bloodlines are in the Americas, right? Even the indigenous people of North America, we identify their cheekbones, their noses. There was African ancestry already here, and there's an intentionality in the history to tell us that our ancestry is somewhere else. There's also a reason why phenotypically we don't look like traditional Africans, and it's not because of interracial breeding, but because we are a different people. So just to identify any of those pieces, and also relating to I don't know if you know Zora Neale Hurston. They recently published a book, Barracoon, where she details some of the issues of the Civil War. In fact, that the Confederacy decided to start transatlantic slave trade again. So just identifying some of those components and some of like the brutalities of history, because there seems to be for me, there seems to be a denial and of reparations movement, right? Like you guys know, the denial of that reparations movement is grounded in that this is not our land, right? Like that's and
the erasure of history, right?
And companies are doing everything they can to get around it, giving out grants to Black-owned companies, but that's not quite what we need. Like, it's a nice start, but cut the check.
It's not a complete solution.
Yeah, cut the check. I mean, Harvard was built by Black hands. The White House was built by Black hands. Like, cut the check for all of that labor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Well, I thank you so much for the work that you do, because our history is being whitewashed. And I think that so many of our youth and the future generations will benefit from your storytelling. So thanks so much for taking the time to stop by the show.
Appreciate you.
And to purchase... Yeah, so to purchase your copy of No Mountain High Enough, Zola's Daddy-Daughter Dates, and Darrin's other books that he mentioned today, visit CollinsCubicle.com. And if this conversation inspired you in some way, I'd love to hear about it with knowing your number one takeaway. So go ahead and drop down in the comments and tell us what your aha moment was from this conversation that Darrin and I had. And if you want to hear more conversations and content like this, be sure to share it with family members or friends. And finally, in an effort to stay true to our vision of remaining unbought, unbossed, and unapologetic, we've created the opportunity for you, for those of you who enjoy this transformational content and this uplifting programming, to support us monetarily through Patreon. So for as little as $5 a month, you can invest in a network dedicated to creating programming for the upliftment and the enrichment of Black people through media and entrepreneurship. So to patronize us, please visit thinklikeathoughtleader.com and hit that green button to say, let's build this. Your monthly investment will help build a groundbreaking multimedia company that will shift paradigms and empower a generation of leaders and entrepreneurs with thoughtful programming. Thanks so much for your support. Thank you for tuning in. Take care and stay well.